Hey there, Riverland. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, he looks a little different today in this video. His skin has more of a rosy glow. Isn't he 61? He doesn't look a day over 60. Well, there's an easy explanation on that one. I finally got to the mall for the first time in a year. Macy's was like a ghost town. And I was there to get some khakis for my confirmation this week, and also got some Clinique Dramatically Different lotion. And I think it's taken a few months off of me, and I am again wasting your time. And I'm going to waste a little bit more too, if you're okay with it. Backing up. I had this idea that I would at least do one of these vids near my maple sap operation, and that's possible. I should have done it this morning when the sky was just clear blue, blue sky, no clouds. And now there's clouds rolling through in addition to the sun, which means that the light gets messed up. And how many times have you seen me fight that? So I either need it all gray or very few clouds in the sky in order to do outdoor vids, to give you something other than my genius background with all my books that prove I'm a professor. We got some of that coming. We got a lot of videos left in April and May, and I'll try to get you out on my beautiful property. I have 20 acres here that is just so gorgeous, and I'm not bragging. It's just a fact. Private 20 acres here on this little lake, and it's kind of a neat place to make YouTube videos. So, barring that, the inability to get outside, at least today, let me have a look at this. This is what my buckets sound like when they're empty and the trees are just starting to roll. Kind of fun, isn't it? So real quick, I'll tell you that I shared that with a friend of mine. I sent it to him on a dear friend of mine, my friend Steve Yeager, who's a professional jazz musician and has been teaching for years now in the Anoka district, and COVID has made him want to put down that chalk. And it's okay. He's going to keep working. He's going to spend his time in studios making beautiful, beautiful albums of all sorts. He's really into poetry too. So when I sent him the drip sound, he just sent me a text back that said, "I'm sampling that right now." And here's what he did with it. Check this out. It's a found sound, right? I think you get the idea. Anyway, I just think that's fun, and I'm going to lay down a guitar track on it. Maybe more than one. He's sending me a box to be able to do it. I'm not that digitally with my music. I'm mostly an analog guy. But I'm gonna put some guitar tracks on, and we're gonna build it up. And can you imagine already what I'm gonna call it? It's not gonna be a symphony. It's gonna be a sapphony. Get it? Sapphony. So, messing with you again. 2 minutes in. Okay. We got to start with a little poetry. Today is going to be like super interesting, like for about 2 minutes and 53 seconds as I put a little Padraig before you. And then we got to roll up our sleeves and work a little bit. I did something with my classes yesterday, Wednesday in Brainerd, yesterday, March 24th, with my Comp 2 students, that they actually kind of got into it a little bit. And basically what we did, and what we're going to try to replicate and enact now, is kind of a let's look under the hood at 3 sample introductory paragraphs from student research papers from a while ago, from 2011-ish, but it doesn't matter. Decade after decade, university and college students write research papers. And it's more important, I think, to use student models than professional models, because you get a professional model and you feel like you got to mimic that, right? That's your way to succeed. So we'll get there when we get there. But first, and that's the bulk of it. That's kind of my entree today, if this could be called a meal, instead of an all-you-can-think smorgasbord. So the main thing we're going to do is look at 3 paragraphs, but I got to put something really beautiful before you. And if you are someone who skips the poetry, who just kind of scrubs the bar and says no thanks, try not to do that here. On April 6th, I think I've already told you, I'm going to be hosting Padraig Otuama out of my office. And just yesterday, New York City called, and Professor Vazhina Mort, a Belarusian woman who's just a very serious rising star in American literature, originally from Russia. She's going to read at the end of the month, so I have my work cut out for me. The PR gears are just going, and I'm behind on everything. And suddenly, I've got to host 2 poets in 1 month. I think I've done that once before, or maybe not. I don't know. We'll see. And we'll just see how many people I can get to tune in. I'll make sure you get the links to both readings. And the good news is that I'm hosting them on Tuesdays, so I'll minimize the disruption that's coming in the spring. Although we got some of that, and we don't need to talk about that today. In other words, weeks that aren't quite full. Starting with next week. Why not talk about it now? Next week, you're only going to see 2 videos from me. This week, you'll see 3. I teach Monday and Wednesday next week, and then next Friday, a week from tomorrow, my department is participating in my Central Lakes College's nationwide college-wide assessment. And the English majors, my team of 10, we're going to get together and we're going to assess, surprise, students' ability to document in MLA format. I'd rather do something else. I'd rather study empathy in journal writing or whatever. But I'm going to participate and help. And then the following week, we'll again have only 2 videos, because on April 9th, believe it or not, I'm making a presentation about you, Riverland, and this experience. I've already talked about this, to a huge IT conference that will be virtual this year in America and Canada. And I'll be talking about this experience using YouTube videos, and a few of you chimed in a while back about the experience, and some of you have written about it too, and when I get caught up on the journal entries, maybe we'll see how things are going for you. It's not the perfect way to teach, but I do want to report to my brothers and sister educators what this experience has been like. The good, the bad, the porn bots. Thanks for alerting me, somebody. I can't remember who did it, but you helped me out this week. I gotta cut those comments, because there's evil. There's monsters among us. And anyway, Padraig is, I can't remember what I've told you about him and what I haven't. He's a theologian, he's a poet, he is a peacemaker, he writes memoir, and his day job is conflict resolution, right? So if any of you ever own a corporation someday and you got trouble with a major executive or a faction of your company, you'll bring in somebody like Padraig. He'll come into the conference room, listen to both sides, and the job is what it proclaims. He's a resolver of conflicts. He makes peace. One other comment on this. Usually when I want to get poetry to students, live or virtually, there's a couple methods. I'll read a poem that I adore as well as I can, or since it's a golden time to be teaching English and loving poetry, there's just a wealth of poetry on YouTube, so I'll use YouTube. This is kind of a little bit of a hybrid-y thing, in that there's the On Being project, which actually comes out of St. Paul, who Padraig works for part-time, from Belfast, Northern Ireland. They made a series of films, and they made a film for Padraig, for this little film that scares me a little bit, because the title is it's a heavy subject. How to Be Alone is the name of the poem. Ordinarily, Billy Collins and I decided that most efforts to put poetry to music or poetry to film or poetry to animation is often just a catastrophe. And as Billy puts it, it's an unnecessary act, right? If you have a poem about a cow, there's really no need to have generally to have a picture of a cow on the opposing page, because the reader should do some kind of work. And yet I find this a little bit haunting and very beautiful. And oh my gosh, when I ran this by every class yesterday, all 4 of them live, especially my humanities class, they all liked it, but my humanities class seemed the happiest. When I looked at all the Zoom squares and said, did you find that beautiful? Did that make anyone happy? Oh my gosh, vigorous nodding. And the silence of Zoom. A lot of silence teaching this way. Here's Padraig, his poem, How to Be Alone.
How to be alone. It all begins with knowing nothing lasts forever, so you might as well start packing now. In the meantime, practice being alive. There will be a party where you'll feel like nobody's paying you attention, and there will be a party where attention's all you'll get. What you need to do is to remember to talk to yourself between these parties. And again, there will be a day, a decade, where you won't fit in with your body, even though you're in the only body you're in. You need to control your habit of forgetting to breathe. Remember when you were younger and you practiced kissing on your arm? You were onto something then. Sometimes harm knows its own healing. Comfort knows its own intelligence. Kindness too. It needs no reason. There is a you telling you another story of you. Listen to her. Where do you feel anxiety in your body? The chest? The fist? The dream before waking? The head that feels like it's at the top of the swing, or the clutch of gut like falling and falling and falling and falling? It knows something. You're dying. Try to stay alive. For now, touch yourself. I'm serious. Touch yourself. Take your hand and place your hand someplace upon your body and listen to the community of madness that you are. You are such an interesting conversation. You belong here.
Now, I've already mentioned that in a couple weeks, next week actually, I have to participate in assessment. I think assessment is ruining everything in college. And I hope none of my 91 subscribers are administrators in the Minn State system, because that might make them angry. But that's how I feel. And yet I participate in it episodically. And quick origin story. About 10, 11 years ago, when I was coming into this system after my swerve year that I've told you about, had a little bit of a crisis time that ended up being the greatest gift of my life, teaching for Central Lakes College, and now you guys, I love you too. But there was a period there for a couple of years where I couldn't quite let go of St. John's and St. Ben's, where I spent half my life, first as a student, then as a teacher, and I sent my sons there, you know that. So got a really complicated relationship. And as I used to joke, still joking I guess, fired by the monks, hired by the nuns. For a couple of years I taught in the FYS program, first year seminar program, through the College of St. Benedict. And I'm really sorry to report to you that they've cut that. Imagine Comp 2 as a year-long course, right? With only 16 students and a professor that acts as your not only your teacher thematically for whatever you want to teach a research project about, but also as your academic advisor. And at the end of one of those school years, before I finally said, okay, goodbye, adieu, CSB, SJU, there was a summer where the director of FYS asked a bunch of us to read every single research paper that was written that year by the Johnnies and Bennies. And that was like 1,000 papers, you guys. And I destroyed, they paid us pretty handsomely, but it wrecked 3 consecutive summer afternoons. And oh my gosh, when I was done with that period of time, I'm like, I don't want to see another research paper ever again. And since then, I've seen a few research papers, as you can guess. But what we were doing was assessing the 3 things that I still value because of that training. I value the idea that you're going to make a project that will make an argument. I value the idea that you're going to make an argument while getting help. And I value the idea of you putting in perspective, in collision actually, different perspectives, different opinions. And now this is going to be not the most riveting part of our spring, but let's take a quick look at these paragraphs, and I'll read each one. I think the first one is the longest one. Yeah. And I'll just make really fast editorial comments because we can't make this interactive, but just check this out. On June 6th, example number 1. On June 6th, 2005, Omaha Public School Superintendent John Mackey cited an 1891 law dubbed the One City, One School Board, I'm sucking at this, One City, One School District that would require all schools located within the Omaha metropolitan area to be integrated into the Omaha Public School District. Superintendent Mackey's justification for the reenactment of the long-dead policy was the increase in funding his district would receive, and that by combining the districts it would give the Omaha learning community greater diversity. Although One City, One School District was struck down in January 2006, the learning community that replaced the plan and resulted from the rulings of the Legislative Bill 1024, which originally split the Omaha Public School District into 3 separate districts until passage of the LB 641, still has many in Omaha clamoring for a second chance at reinstating the original bill. While the results of the new learning community have been less than desirable, the One City, One School District policy of 1891 remains outdated and irrelevant. The implement of such policy today would only serve to disrupt the learning process of thousands of Omaha children and the lives of thousands of teachers across the 6 school districts, particularly the Millard Public School District that would be affected. Okay, just what are my comments about that paragraph? At least it had a decent thesis, okay? The thesis means a placing down, right? Maybe I've already talked about this. It also in Latin means exordium. And I've probably already talked about this every fall in my beloved classroom, which I'm hoping to get back to this August and hopefully forever until I'm dead. I always explain the introductory paragraph as the Latins would have, as an exordium, which means a leading into. And I pull the same sight gag every year. We probably talked about this in the fall, Comp 1ers, if you were with me. I often pick out a football player. The bigger the better, man. If the dude is like 350, 350 pounds, that's exactly what I want. And I'll say to the football player, okay, stand up, stand up. And the kid will stand up and get nervous. And then I'll say, take me by the hand. And he'll take me by the hand, which makes him even more nervous. Sorry, that's my friend Steve, who I was just talking about. That's my friend Steve who made that little riffy thing. What was I saying? Okay, and then I'll say to the football player, take me somewhere, anywhere. And the kid will lead me around, right? And there's a big aisle between the long rows of tables, big classroom, beautiful classroom. Sometimes they take me over to the window, and sometimes they take me to the door. Well, it's a sight gag that illustrates the idea that when I pick up anything that I'm reading, I just want to know, where are we going? And I think that example at least gave you an idea. Here's another one. Think about the children. This one's a little more brief. Throughout the past several decades, there's been a growing trend towards dual career families. This marks a change from the traditional nuclear family in which the father is the breadwinner and the mother devotes her time to child rearing and homemaking. Even if a family has an employed parent and one stay-at-home parent now, it is quite possible that the mother is working and the father is the one at home raising the children. The question is, what effect does this trend have on children? Are there benefits for a child having 2 parents who are well educated and in the workforce, providing the child with more opportunities, Or does a child benefit more from having a parent at home whose sole possession is to care for him or her? So I think the thing to notice here, my students liked this paragraph a lot better yesterday, but there's no thesis, really. It's short, it's clear, it's interesting, and but it's just the paragraph ends with two questions. Is it this or is it this? Kind of ends in a dualism. We all had a pretty strong hunch that the student was going to argue on behalf of the traditional nuclear family with a stay-at-home mom. That's how we did it here in this house. And what I marked that, oh, I gotta turn this off, sorry. Would I mark that down? No, absolutely. Hopefully the kid will write towards the thesis and maybe spill it in the next paragraph. And again, intro number 2. Let's give you a third intro here. I had a Mexican, one of my students from Mexico, the only student I'm serving, at least up in Brainerd from Mexico, Javi Anderson Mendoza. It's got a hyphenated name. He loved this, and it was so fun yesterday because he taught me how to say this word that I just was botching. Check this one out. Here's our last example for today, and then we'll call it a video. Modern medicine has only existed since the 1880s with the development of germ theory. Previously, doctors used the ancient Greek beliefs of Hippocrates to treat patients. The idea of preventative medicine did not exist. Instead, doctors and other medical professionals tried to deal with ailments as they came, not realizing that they could prevent disease. Medical practices were conducted by doctors and surgeons, along with shamans, religious peoples, and other healers. In Hispanic history, commonly used medical beliefs stem from pre-Columbian civilizations and their use of herbs and healers. Healers were well respected and trusted people in these ancient societies. They took care of physical ailments as well as matters of the mind and spirit. When the Spanish conquistadors arrived, they brought with them another set of medical beliefs that have helped shape modern Hispanic medical practice. This practice is commonly referred to as folk healing or traditional medicine. Folk healing, also referred to as curanderismo, I blew that, is defined as a set of health beliefs and practices derived from ethnic and historical traditions that have as their goal the amelioration or cure of psychological, spiritual, and physical problems. Curanderismo is still a commonly used medical practice among Latinos, more specifically Mexican Americans. Even when modern medicine is available, Mexican Americans often use traditional methods over or before modern techniques. And that's a third consecutive paragraph, well written, that didn't end in a clear thesis, right? The clearest way to create a thesis is to say, I believe this. Then you're up and running. First paragraph had that. The second two didn't. But Javi's is kind of his short, this is kind of his nickname. Javier likes to be called Javi. Javi really loved that paragraph. And I said, this is an honor of you because you're from Mexico. And I'm so glad he's in that class. We don't have a lot of diversity in Brainerd. I don't think anywhere near like there is in Austin. And I'm really glad that I have an older dude in there that's Mexican and who's gay. Why? Because I'm not Mexican and I'm not gay. It's just nice to have people around that see the world differently than you. And that we agreed, though, even though there's not a clear thesis there, Javi and I agreed, and everybody agreed, that it looked really likely that writer was going to very quickly tilt in favor of defending that curanderismo, however you say that. And it looked like he was going to write a whole paper about how this needs to be respected and paid attention to, and maybe even brought back, as alternative ways to stay healthy. Are things that we need to consider. And this is a little off track, but for some reason, when Javi got done, I said, can I ask you a question, Javi, about Mexico City or Mexico? And I asked him, I said, Javi, in the United States, we've seen some statues toppled. Historic figures, people thinking that history is simple and you can just sanitize it by knocking over statues, although I can kind of get it. Racism is a serious problem. But my question for him was, okay, Javi, in the United States, statues of Christopher Columbus are being knocked over left and right. In Mexico, what's the fate of statues of Hernan Cortez? Whoa, he just lit up and smiled. He said, you know what, it's the exact same thing. He told me that there's this big, big boulevard in Mexico City that has lots of roundabouts that have statues in the middle. And some of them used to have, the Hernan Cortez statues are being removed, if not knocked over. Colonialism. Or is it just history? I have no idea. Columbus goes north, Hernan Cortez goes south, and 150 million Native Americans who are leading beautiful, creative, productive lives. Plazas, pyramids, especially like at Chichen Itza, the Yucatan Peninsula, died. 150 million people died, mostly because of diseases. I hate to end on a bummer. Let me try to think of something cheerful. It's almost April. And the first day of spring came and went this week. How about if we end on a little bit more of a positive note? Let me get this edited and up to you. Love you guys. Love you, Riverlanders. Stay safe. God bless you. Oh, my son told me if I made a super weird face, like I did with my last video, that it's a thing, that it will drive up views. Let's see if this works.